remember that now, and I had to restart some things.
I don't think your computer's getting enough sleep. I think that's the problem.
I think I've got. I literally have 5 different machines that I work on for different stuff. Like, just for the show, I use 3. You know, and I'm letting one of those rest because I've needed to move its little charger somewhere else to get that. So I'm down to 2. Then I've got my 2 I use for work. So.
And just as long as you don't confuse them.
Oh no, I've. It's one of those. You know, I open up one of them and automatically start doing podcast stuff because that's all I do it for, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, that's not what I'm doing here. That's not what I'm trying to do. Hold on, brain. You know, I bet I forgot to mute everything, so everybody's getting exactly what we're saying. They are. Hey, everybody. Mute this real quick.
If you dream of your motorcycle, if your day isn't complete without some time in the saddle, if all you need is the open road and a full tank of gas, well, you've come to the right place, because this is Throttled, and it's starting now. Here's your host, Kevin McKinney.
Hello and welcome back to Throttled, everybody. So glad you could join us. I think we've got more than just Larry and I. We found Tom over in Georgia. He wandered on into the studio this week, and we'll start with you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, sorry I missed last week's show. It was a couple weeks of classes, and they kind of built up on me, so spent a quiet evening with the family, so had to miss. But yeah, it's been a good couple of weeks since I've been on.
And out there on the other shore, how are you doing, Larry?
Talking to you from the West Coast, Hollywood, etc. Things have been good out here this week, and we're getting some rain, which we desperately need, and that'll be into next week. So I'm happy about that and glad to be here.
And well, I'm doing okay. I can't complain too much. Chris, I think, is out messing with his Jeep. I don't know where he is tonight, but it's funny. I know several motorcycle guys that they get Jeeps and they just kind of go Jeep minded for a little bit, but they always come back. So
he is now posting stuff on Facebook about Farkles and additions to his Jeep.
Mm-hmm. But I'll to give him credit, he posted equally amounts of stuff about motorcycles as well, about getting his chocks together. But he posted stuff about storing his motorcycles, but then actively working on his Jeep. And so I just hope he keeps that year-round riding thing up and doesn't go totally Jeep on us.
Paul has a Jeep.
I know. And look, Jeeps are great. I mean,
I used to own a CJ7.
If I wanted to go riding around to some of the trails around here, I'd go get a Jeep. It just would be the thing.
I've never had a Jeep, but I will say that my older son, when he was a couple of years old, he would call a Jeep a beep, and he would just he would, out of the blue, he'd say a beep, and we look out, and sure enough, there was a Jeep going by. So
we'll have to tell Chris about that. How's that beep doing? I share that with you. How you liking that beep? Well, let's dive into what kind of riding we did this week. And I'll tell you what, I'll go first because mine's short and sweet. Yesterday, went out for a little ride, about an hour and a half. I think it only came to like 56 miles. It was literally just point the bike in a direction, and there's a couple roads that I think I knew where they went, but I wasn't really sure. So I was like, let's just see where this kind of goes. And it was more in an urban setting, so it took longer to kind of get through because, traffic. And I was like, oh, okay, so that I was right. This is where this one went. One of them I was surprised. I didn't realize that like the 500 feet that you can't see, these two roads connected. Like I knew this road coming this direction and that road going the other direction, but there's like 500 feet of it that I never actually ridden over or traveled on. I'd always turned off. And then I was like, oh, so I didn't realize this and that were the same thing, because I don't pay too much attention to the signs and, what road I'm on at a time and thinking about, well, I've been on this, I know to turn right and turn left, and there we are. So, I did that, and it's a nice hour and a half ride, get some wind therapy, Saturday kind of around lunch, and that was my riding for the week. So now, Tom, I think you said you didn't get any riding in this week, but you had other adventures that we'll get into in just a second. So we'll let Larry talk about all of his rides, because apparently he just went out multiple times.
Yes, I was chock full of rides this week. Actually, I did two, but it was great. It was great to get out, and I'm doing a heck of a lot of riding lately, because I ride one of my bikes every morning. And then in the afternoon, when I don't have other things to do, I hop on my motorcycle and take that out. And boy, so I am having so much fun. And so this week I went out a couple of times. I went up coast. I'm doing short rides. I'm still not comfortable doing longer, more extensive rides because of the COVID situation around here and so on. But the short rides are working well for me, and the weather was beautiful. And one of the rides I went up to past Nicasio to Point Reyes Station, and then down the coast with lots of switchbacks and twisties and cliffs overlooking the ocean. It was just gorgeous. And then later on in the week, I did a second ride, and I went up to the Point Reyes Petaluma Road and rode that out towards Petaluma, and then back along Highway 101 to my house. And both rides were about 65 miles, which takes a couple of hours, 2.5 hours, and it was just gorgeous. I used to, when I was riding, I would often listen to music or even sometimes audio books and stuff like that while I'm riding. But lately, I've just enjoyed the silence and let my thoughts go where they go while I'm riding, and it's been a heck of a lot of fun. So that's what I've been doing this week.
And I kind of agree with you. I've been doing the same thing for the longest time. It's been just me listening to the bike and not really doing too much else. Every once in a while I'll turn the radio and stuff on, but for a lot of the time lately, I haven't been.
Yeah, I find, as people have written and talked about, there is something almost meditative about just letting myself enjoy the experience and not distract myself from the moment. And so doing that, I do find my thinking sometimes goes into the strangest places, but that might be another day, another topic that we'll talk about.
Another psychiatric session. Yeah,
I agree.
What was that, Tom?
I said, and not for G-rated audiences.
No.
Yeah.
all clean stuff.
All righty. Well, so our topic this week kind of is a derivative of some stuff that happened to Tom. So, Tom, why don't we go through your situation, and then we'll get into the topic, which may be a quick one for the week. We'll see. We don't know. We never really know. We just, shooting from the hip. Ta-da.
Could be. And yeah, I forgot in our preamble or pre-show discussion, I do want to talk about my. I did some stuff with the AMA this week, so let me start off with that. I was going to leave that for the end of the show, but before we end, I want to mention this. If you guys recall, about a month ago, I mentioned that I'd offered to volunteer with the AMA and was appointed to their road riding commission. So they have established about 2 or 3 commissions, one on road riding, one on off-road riding, and another on racing. And these commissions are made up of volunteers. The road riding commission's got about 16 people nationwide. And so we're kind of going to be the advisory group to the AMA on promoting road riding and membership with the AMA, and how do we get out with our state coordinators and make an impact to the motorcycle community. So we just had our first meeting this week. Went very well. It was just introductions and figuring out this is brand new for the AMA. These commissions, we're all appointed to 2-year seats on this, and I'm going to be part of joined up into a subcommittee that's supposed to develop. We're going to try and develop what's the value of the AMA. Why, as we're talking with people, riders out there, why join? So that's what the subcommittee that I'll be working with on. But so that was a few hours. So I did a little stuff off the bike, but I wanted to mention that because I'm getting more and more involved with the AMA, and we'll be promoting it, and who knows, at some AMA events you may see me around on that.
That's great. What just out of curiosity, could you share a little, Jill, about what your thinking is about promoting road riding?
So a lot of our discussion was that, the people just don't know what the AMA is and what they do. They either think of it from a racing standpoint, which they promote a lot, or if you're a member, maybe their towing service that they provide. There was a lot of club people that were in the commission. I kind of took it from a non-club area, and it's kind of like the rest of the industry. How do you get younger people, those that are new to riding, to come into the AMA, and what can the AMA do to promote themselves and be a part of the industry besides even what they do with the government in fighting laws that restrict riding and other laws that promote safe riding. So that was kind of our general discussion, and we spent 2 hours on the first call.
Oh, great. Well, I'll be interested to hear how things develop, what comes up.
Yeah. So I may bring things up from time to time as this moves along. So as Kevin alluded to, I did not have any road riding this week other than last weekend. So I'll take this week from Monday on. But I had off-road or work on the bike. So I think also I mentioned a few weeks ago, I had put a new battery in my bike. So I put a MotoBat lithium battery in the bike.
Mm-hmm.
And from the first go round with it, every time I hit the starter, the GS would just shut down. Did not like the drop in voltage, even though I had to put a voltage meter on it. It was fine, but it would shut down and I'd have to recycle the bike back on, and then it would start right up. Wasn't quite sure, checked my wires and everything, and okay, it's been really cold from when I put it in. Even one cold morning that I went out, it was like 34. So this was that class. The bike had been sitting outside for a while, and it took me half a dozen, 8 times before the bike started up. So, all right, this is unusual. I know I have owned lithium batteries before. Years ago, I used to have a Shirai in my 2010 BMW RT. So I know how lithiums work. But this was even a little more unusual. And check the voltage on it. Voltage was great. Sitting voltage was at 13. Even as I hit the key, it stayed above 12. So I called MotoBat, discussed that with them, and I've never used them. MotoBat is an Australian company. But they have a U.S. operations. So what they told me was that, well, yeah, their bikes are really only made for racing, not for use in street motorcycles. They didn't design them for that, and they didn't put the electronics in for it. Which I said, well, that's kind of unusual because your website has a battery finder, and if I put my bike in, this is the battery that's recommended for it. And they're like, yeah, you run too many electronics on the street bikes for our batteries really to handle that, which was a little stretching it a bit, because
Right.
as long as you don't have anything hooked to the battery that's running while the engine's off, your alternator or stator is handling everything. So came to be that I said, well, your website promoted this, and you're saying that it doesn't work in the bike. So let's just, they offered to, thankfully, ship the battery back to them, and they refunded. So I put my old battery back in, which is, it's starting the bike, but I could tell that voltage is a little bit low on it. So I will have to look for a new battery. I am still sold on lithium batteries because it goes from 12 pounds in a lead acid or an AGM down to 2 pounds for a lithium. So either I'm going to end up with a Shirai or perhaps anti-gravity. I've got an anti-gravity start, one of those little starter packs that has worked great for years for me. So, so that's my little battery fun. Either of you guys ever deal with lithium batteries in your motorcycles now or in the past?
No, I'm trying to think if I've ever had to. Well, in my personal bike, I don't know if I've ever had the battery changed. Maybe once on the Tenere. I don't know. I kind of keep it on a tender and I can't think of having an issue. Now my kids, I got one of my kids' bikes that, it's a TTR 90, and it goes through batteries about like people go through antacids. I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, I haven't had any experience with lithium batteries outside of your normal usage that you would get, nothing motorcycle related. What about you, Larry?
Yeah, well, I go through a lot of antacids, Kevin. So I can tell you that I don't go through nearly as many batteries. I haven't used lithium batteries. I've replaced batteries on my my Harley Switchback, and in fact, I took it to one of the classes, the riding classes that I went to, and the one where Brian was an assistant instructor, and my battery died in the middle of the class, and that was when Brian sort of introduced himself, and he gave me a ride to a local, Auto Mart or one of the auto supply houses that was close by, and they had a suitably sized battery for my Harley. It wasn't a Harley battery, but it was a an off-brand battery that was the same size and voltage and so on, and so they put that, and it was charged up. It happened to have been charged, so I bought that, and that was what was in my Switchback thereafter. And so far on my Kawasaki, it's been fine. But so my experience with batteries is basically that. It was that time that I switched out the Harley battery, and that worked out great. But I haven't dealt with lithium batteries in motorcycles.
Yeah, maybe I'm hard on batteries, but or it's all the trips. I don't put mine on a tender unless I'm going to be away from it for a while. But typically, I get about 3 years at least out of the batteries that I've had. And so in the chat, Rodney brings up a point as far as lithium batteries having a challenge in the cold, and so that is the biggest critique against lithium batteries, is that they don't work in the cold. So. Let me belay that one a little bit. If I lived up north and I typically rode in temperatures under 32 degrees or even down to 0, yeah, I might not get a lithium battery. Living in the south, it's rare that we have temperatures down in the 30s. If we do, it's for a short period of time. And what lithium batteries like are a little bit of warmth. So the typical procedure is, you just get into the habit of it, is you turn your bike on while you're suiting up, or you turn lights on or something, and that just warms the battery up. If it's extremely cold, you may go and start your battery and it doesn't start. Mm-hmm. Unlike a lead acid battery, it gets stronger as the battery warms up. So you may hit the starter and it just gives you that roar, and that's it. Hit it again and it'll fire right up. Wait a few moments for the battery to warm up, and that's all that it takes. So unlike a lead acid, if it goes, you're done. It's kaput. And the lithiums today have great battery management systems in them. The Anti-Grav even has a restart feature where it won't let, and I just watched a YouTube on this on how it works. A guy drained his battery, so it won't let the battery die. He drained the battery purposely to where it wouldn't start the bike, and then they've got a button on the top of the battery where you push the restart. It reinitializes the voltage back up to about 2.8 or 12.8 and started the bike right back up, and it was a big KTM 1290 that he was experimenting on. So that cold thing is a little bit of a, sorry, Rodney, a little bit of a fallacy if you know how lithiums work and you know the procedures in working with them. Like I said, typically you wouldn't turn your bike on and let it sit there with the lights on until you're ready to go. No, not so with the lithium. Turn it on for 10 minutes while you're gearing up and getting ready.
If
The
it's
battery
cold.
will be ready, especially if it's cold.
If it's cold,
If it's cold.
Yeah. All right, so brain.
So let's go on to the topic here. So the topic I think that I was going to prompt up was the second part of my fun this week was, what do you do for your electronics? So by electronics on the bike, I mean, do you add extra lights? Do you change your horn out to like a car horn or one of those blaster horns? Do you have heated gear? Do you have a heated seat? Or have you added even heated grips to your bike if they're not stock? And if you're adding any of those extra electrical things, how are you powering them up? You put them right to the battery, or are you adding some device? And if so, what device, and what's your experience been? And I guess along with this is that, do you guys do your own electronic farkles and wiring and such, or do you bring that to a shop? So I'm going to throw that out there first before I talk about my experience, and whichever one of you want to go first.
Larry, you want to go first, and then I'll follow up, and then we'll let him wrap up.
Sure. So, being the mechanic that I am, and with my knowledge of bikes and their electrical systems as it is, I have fiddled around with adding electronic devices to my bike. Now, both on my Harley, I had a CB transceiver that had already been wired in when I got the bike, and I had a host of wires. I had a huge. It came with a huge wiring harness built in. Many of the leads of which actually were untapped. They were just hanging there, and I have no idea what they were used for or what they might be useful for. And so on that bike, I added my phone and the GPS, which was already wired in. And my phone, I was able to use one of the leads that was hanging as an additional power lead. Apparently, it also went from the battery, and it was able to power up my phone with the appropriate cable. So that was what I used on my Harley. And then when I got my Versas, it came with mounts, a mount for a phone, one of those X mounts. And I got an additional one, and I transferred the GPS from my Harley to the Kawasaki. Now, the Kawasaki came with a cigarette lighter type outlet built in. It's actually, I think, an option on the bike. And as I've mentioned before, the bike that I bought was pretty well optioned up. I think it had just about everything that Kawasaki offers for the Versys 650. And so I had the cigarette lighter outlet, and so I plugged in a charger that into the outlet, and the charger had two outlets, and I used one for my GPS and I used one for my phone. And so I was able to ride with both turned on and charging and staying charged throughout the ride. And that worked for a little while, but as I mentioned before, the charging started to become intermittent, and it would go off while I was riding, and then it would come back on. Or if I jiggled anything, almost anything, if I jiggled the cable from the charger to the device, it would go back on. Or if I jiggled the charger in the outlet, it would go back on. And even if I jiggled the cable where it went into the device, it would go back on. But it would only stay on for a while, and then it would go back off, and I'd get all sorts of error messages. This cable cannot be used, or the device is not charging, and stuff like that. So I've been struggling with that, trying to figure out what the problem is, whether the intermittent connection has to do with the fact that the charger is not solidly attached and that vibrations may cause it to lose contact, or if there's a problem within the device itself. It's even more puzzling because at this point, and this happened this week when I was riding, I had my phone, which was attached, and it was charging constantly, and it was fine. And then my GPS, which was attached to the same charger, it was very intermittent. It would charge, and then I would get an error message, and then it would go off, and so on. So this is still something of a puzzle to me. I'm not sure where the problem lies. I did figure out that the charger, that the GPS device has a built-in lithium battery, and the battery was not charging, and consequently the battery was completely drained. And so anytime that it lost power, then it would go off because it had no reserve power from the battery. So I took it off the bike, and I charged up the GPS and put it back on the bike. Still got the same problems, but it did not black out. I would simply get the error message that it is no longer charging and that the cable is not suitable and blah, 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 even though it is a Garmin cable for the GPS. So I'm still having the problem with the GPS device, and I'm not sure what the solution is. I think that I'm almost ready at this point to just use the GPS on its built-in battery power and disconnect it from the charger.
And Larry, by charger, you mean these are wired directly to the battery, so you're not going through?
No, they're not. Go ahead.
So yeah, what do you mean by going to like a cigarette lighter?
Yes.
That's connected to the battery. Yeah. Okay, so that's still direct wired to the battery.
Well,
it's within the bike system.
Yes, it is, and as I say, I have the phone and the GPS both coming off of that cigarette lighter charger, and the phone is doing fine at this point, but not to the GPS. So I'm not, my other thought is maybe there's some kind of problem on the in the GPS. Maybe there's a circuit board that has some cracks in it that's causing it to be intermittent.
Yeah, and so that's one of the challenges of a cigarette lighter connector is that they are susceptible to vibration. So whether you're getting a good connection in those or not. I know the Beamers use a different setup. They use a DIN setup, but that's one of the challenges with a cigarette lighter connection. Yeah, and it could be also check sometimes just by putting it in or out. I don't know if you leave it in all the time, but sometimes the actual male end that plugs in is bad itself. It's got some springs on it that hold it in place,
right,
and provide power to it. Check that. Sometimes rewiring or putting a fresh one of those in might help.
I did. I actually tried a different one that I had, and I had the same problem, which made me more suspicious that the problem's inside of the GPS.
So then it's how much power is going to that socket? How many, is it a, and you shouldn't, with just GPS and phone, it shouldn't be pulling enough power to kill it off. It's probably 5 watts and at least 2 to 4 amps. So you should be fine with the phone and the GPS. Mm-hmm. But that's the other piece.
It depends on the little thing you're plugging into your cigarette lighter, right? I mean, those are only like, I've seen those, especially like on some of the newer phones that have the fast charging. If you plug 2 phones into that, neither phone's going to get fast charging, and they're going to slowly barely get anything, right? So, right. I mean, it really depends on the thing that you're plugging into the cigarette lighter, and then is the cigarette lighter able to handle all that? Because a lot of them are on, a very small fuse, and so you have to just check all that out. Now, I don't know about the Garmin, what it pulls or needs. And to be honest, electric stuff, I've never been a real expert at. I seem to figure it out, and then I don't use it for 3 years, and then I'm like, okay, wait a minute, what's it again? So, that's kind of how it goes. But so other than that, Larry, what else have you done, or would you like to do to your bikes?
Well, my current thinking is kind of to simplify the situation. I mean, we're talking about additional electrical farkles that we put on the bikes. I'm not thinking so much in terms of LED lighting or that kind of stuff. My bike already has fog lights and so on. Although
I know you, Larry. You're going to get the under rim LED strips that change color as you go down the road. He's got the Kawasaki, so it'll change between the green and the yellow. And he'll find some little gadget that equates it to the RPM on the bike. So the faster he goes, the greener it gets. I understand what you're going to do.
Oh, I don't know. I like that idea. I actually thought about that with my Harley. I thought it would fit my Harley's character better. But
you are in California, so it's totally appropriate.
Right. We're very colorful out here. But I suppose wiring up my top box so that the reflectors on it would be actually light up, at night and as brake lights. That's something that I could potentially conceive of doing. But, I was actually thinking of simplifying things. I don't really need both. These days, I don't really need both a GPS and a phone, unless I'm traveling in very remote areas where you won't get, I won't get cellular service or for a period of time, and then the GPS does come in very handy. But otherwise, it's superfluous. The phone has perfectly adequate GPS and direction ability, and I hook it up to my helmet, via Bluetooth, and it works great. So my thought was maybe what I need to just do is, get rid of the GPS and just stay with my phone. And those are the accessories that were most important to me when I on just about all the bikes. In fact, some might argue that it's a little distracting having all of these electronic accessories on the bike, and that's also a question: is how many electronic farkles on the bike are too many electronic farkles? Should you have any? Should the experience be more purist?
Well, let's finish with the breakdown of our bikes, and then we can tackle that if we have time, which we should. Okay. We're right. Yeah. We've got 30 minutes left in the show. So, all right. So if you had nothing else, Larry, so on the Tenere, I had electrical wise, I had added auxiliary lights, which a good buddy of Rodney and I's, Darren, just very kindly one day I was talking about it, and he was like, hey, where do you live? I'll come by and help you do it. And he literally rode over, and he had a Tenere at the time himself. I had, it's like, oh, you got this, you have a hidden auxiliary plug that they put in here because they expect you to do this. Just plug into it. And, he helped me do it, and showed me some tricks on soldering, because it'd been for ages since I soldered, and it was never really, something of high quality I was trying to do at the time. So anyway, he helped me with that. On that bike, I also put in a super brake that basically plugged into the braking system of the bike. It was literally you unplug it here, you plug this thing in the middle of it, and it modulated your brake light if you hadn't braked in the last 12 seconds to make it flash. There was something else I did on that bike. I'm trying to remember what it was.
And how'd you hook them in? You do a fuse box?
No, because I had that auxiliary plug that Yamaha just had empty waiting. I mean, they literally had an auxiliary plug that was switch powered. I used that for the auxiliary lights. What really became my headlight, to be honest, because the Yamaha's headlight was, freaking glowworm. My kid's toy had more glow than I think did. And the other one just drew power from the braking system itself. So when you turn on the bike and you had the natural power, it just pulled off of that. And I mean, it literally just wired in. You literally unplugged a couple of connectors, plugged this thing in, and you're done. I mean, it was a 5-minute process, and 4 of those were trying to figure out how to take the seat off. Trying to think, I did have something else on that bike, and I'm trying. I wired in a switch for the lights. So the auxiliary thing, actually, the light had a cable that came off of it with their switch, and then I didn't like the switch that they had on it, so I ordered a different switch and got that all wired in, soldered up. I used some heat shrink stuff to cover the very bad soldering job I did on that. And at one point I had an extra USB plug because I was having a similar issue to Larry, where I bought one of those little plug in the cigarette lighter kind of thing. And it worked for a while, but then it failed, and I thought I'd just go get this other one. So I got the other one and just had it kind of zip tied to it. And it looked a little janky. So I ended up pulling it off the bike, and that was just straight to the battery there. And I just went back and got a little, $5 little cigarette lighter thing and used that until I got rid of it. On the BMW, the auxiliary lights were already installed. I've added the cables and controller for the heated gear, which is straight to the battery. It has functionality where, the remote, after a certain amount of time, will, if you unplug the jacket from the bike, it requires, when you plug it back up, it requires you to reset the remote. And the remote is when you turn it, it sends out a signal. Outside of that, it doesn't send out a signal. So it's on its own battery separately. Same thing you got, Larry. And then, I just got the lead for the heated gear running to the battery. I haven't added anything else yet. I don't really know if I have a need, because the BMW has so many things on it. I will add, on all my bikes, I've got an SAE Tinder charging cable hanging off of them straight to the battery. I will probably add one of those to the GS. Next time I'm kind of in there, I'll grab one and put it on there. But right now that, it's in my garage, it's semi temperature controlled. It won't get below freezing. So I'm riding it enough to where it should be okay during the winter. And being new-ish, I guess it's really not new because it was a 19 model. We'll see. But on the KTMs, I've just got the SAE, tender lead, electrical-wise, and that's it. So I don't have a ton. I haven't put new horns in. I will say that the horn on the BMW is even worse than it was on the Tenere, and it's a little tempting to want to change that thing, because when Herbie the Love Bug would intimidate you on the road with its horn compared to yours, there's a problem, and it's pretty weak. And so I part of me is like, maybe I want to do that, but for the most part, I think where I want to spend my money at is protection, engine guards, skid guards, shield, and then a seat. Those 4 things are the things that I would probably spend money on before I do anything else to it. The SAE, that's a $5 plug. It's not hard to do. In the past, I've had, and Ronnie's just been in the bike. I was like, hey, now you're going to have this off. Would you just throw on there for me? Since he was already going to be in there. But you just put it in the battery and route it to a place you want it, zip tie it down, and call it a day, button it up. Right. I have looked, I do have the DIN converter that has the USB on it. I have looked at replacing that, since that DIN can just pull out of that system, and replacing it with a USB thing that just snaps in where the DIN socket is. and then running
Yep.
a new cable and reroute the DN someplace else, and then having the SAE to DN conversion thing to where that could be it. It's an option. I haven't 100% said that's what I want to do, and I was actually looking at a charging, like a battery tender to DN thing that they've got out there. So, I just need.
It's like you say, it's a lot easier to just put a SAE cable on it and zip tie it to the frame, and then just hook your
but I
charger up to that.
The filler panel that they use, and it's just so clean looking. I was just like, oh, that just looks nice, and so and it's not that expensive, but I'm just like, am I really going to do that? Probably not. So all right, so as far as I go, that's it electrical wise for me. Now, is there other stuff I'd probably do? If I had a cruiser, some LED lights here and there, depending on how visible I thought the bike was at night, maybe. Would I like to add? I really like your yellow tint on your auxiliary lights, except that I actually get a little bit out of those auxiliary lights I've currently got when I'm in dark areas, because the lights on the BMW aren't fantastic. So I was thinking about getting some of the amber inserts or getting another set, and then moving the auxiliary lights I do have that don't really, the auxiliary lights that come by default don't really put off a lot of light, but they just enough to be a little bit worth it. It's more of, hey, look at me, I'm here. And I really like when Tom was behind me when we were in the mountains, I really liked his little amber things he has on those. So, because to me, you saw those pop better.
Yeah.
So I was actually thinking
those. I went to those a couple of years ago when I had the same experience. I had someone riding with those ambers, and you could just see them. They just stood out.
Yeah, I thought about putting actually getting auxiliary lights that actually work. They're stronger than the default headlights, and have them on a switch to where they're not always on, but then moving the auxiliary lights that are there to another location on the bike. So maybe a little bit lower and a little bit more protected. I'd probably have to get the engine guards first, and then mount them on the inside of the engine guards, and have those be always on. Once that happens, but that is like 6 Farkles and protection items later. And that's, so we're talking years at this point. So, and unless I just, win the lottery and my job situation fixes itself in the next little bit, which I don't think is going to happen. So, anyway, so that's all I got. Tom, what you got?
Well, I guess that's why this subject was so interesting to me, because I've always added a bunch of electrical stuff to my bikes, and I know that I am nowhere near what a lot of the people that I ride with put on their bikes. Now, would put a cautionary tale that, what's been discussed in the chat is that as you add electrical stuff to your bike, know what its alternator output is. How much power is your alternator putting out, and how much is being used by the bike itself, because then you have to minus that out, and that's what you've got left to play with. Now, thankfully, as you add lights, now that we're into LED lights, they draw so little that typically that isn't an issue anymore. Years ago, it was an issue. I had a 2008 V-Strom that did not put out a lot of power. By the time you took away what the bike needed to run, there was about 140 watts left. This was pre-LED lights for the most part, so I had halogen lights. So I had 250-watt halogen lights. So that took 100 watts. And I had an electric jacket that was 90 watts. So that meant that I could either have my lights on and see, or I could be warm, but I can't see and be warm at the same time. So that was a challenge with that bike. And I connected everything up. I also had some extra lights in the back that I put on. I always like, I guess maybe this is my pet peeve, is I like extra lights up front, not crazy, not dozens of them, but just two, at least two extras, as well as extra brake lights. So on that bike, I was using just a standard fuse box. So a fuse box is great because you could hook it in. Everything is then switched power. You find an appropriate switch, which typically on most bikes, that's power going to the brake light. You splice into that, and then you run a extra power bus to the battery. And then you've got fuses, and basically those fuse blocks are about 30 amps. So you've got 30 amps to play with various functions. So you progress up a little bit from there. My next bike, when I had my older BMWs, I started using a product called a PDM 60. So PDM Power Distribution Module. So functions very much like a fuse block, but there's no fuses. And you can hook a computer up to it, and you can change each of it had six circuits, what the wattage was, what the amps were for each of those circuits, and then you assign those to various functions. And again, you had 30 amps to play with, but you could maneuver things around. The advantage with that was you didn't blow any fuses. If you overloaded a circuit for some reason or had a short, it would just shut the circuit down. And the way to reset it was you shut your bike off, let the power drain out of it, and turn it back on, and it would reset it. If it blew again, then you knew that you had some type of issue in the line. So both of those are still used a lot today, fuse blocks as well as the PDM tools.
PDM's very, very popular, and I was close. If I didn't have that auxiliary plug, I would have probably gone to a PDM.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that was literally what it was like. You know, hey, how do I plug this in? And the number one search result is, how do I use X light with PDM? I mean, it was so common at the time. And we're talking 2015 here, so 6 years ago, but it was very common.
And the PDM worked great. I had it in my RT for the years that I owned that, and then I moved it to the GSA for the first year when I got that. But now you've got a lot of bikes, newer bikes, the BMWs in particular, that use CAN bus systems. So the CAN bus is basically the computer is hooked in and monitoring all of the electronics on the bike. It doesn't like adding a new circuit such as a fuse box to it, and it recognizes those things and likes to shut those down. The advantage, though, is that you can use that computerized electrical system that your bike has to control stuff. So now you see the proliferation of, I use a particular product called a CAN Smart that's made by Denali. It's actually made for Denali by Hex, and Hex has their own brand called an Easy Scan or Easy CAN. And what this is it's a small module that plugs into typically the tire pressure monitoring system on the bike, and you just plug it in. It's got a module that plugs into that, and that hooks it into the bike. The advantage of that is that you can, at least with the new generation ones now, there's 4 circuits. You can assign those circuits to different amperages as well as different functions. You can control your lights, you can control a horn, and it allows you to control things on the bike controls. So right now, I like having everything switched. I don't like going direct to the battery with any of my electronics because I like stuff off when I shut the bike off. So I've got a front pair of LED lights that are hooked in. Well, I can, with my my switch gear, like my the turn signal. If I hold that down for 3 seconds, I can turn those lights on and off. If I want to change their intensity, I can use the little whiz wheel that's on the left handlebar and control the intensity of those lights. I can turn them up and down. I've also got different settings for daytime running, nighttime running, as well as whether I'm on low beam or high beam. All that's controlled through the module. It's really neat. My rear brake light is, I can change it to have different settings. You can change it to just come on when the brake light comes on, or I've got mine set to what's called California legal. Larry, you'll like this. So it flashes 4 times and then is solid. But it also is now tied into the latest module. That brake light is also now tied into the bike itself. So if I am doing heavy engine braking and I haven't hit my brake, the light will flash. It's tied into the electronics on the bike. Mm-hmm. Then I've said, you can do multiple sets of lights. I've modified 2 of the circuits to handle my heated gear as well as my heated seat front and rear, so that they're switched as well and have appropriate power. Just like I say, have everything off. So why did this subject come up? So I had an older one, a Gen 1 system, that suddenly started going bad. For whatever reason, my lights would go on and off on occasion. I found a workaround that if I plug the power source into it, that you normally plug your computer into, I could keep it on and functioning. So went back to Denali, and Denali is distributed by Twisted Throttle in the U.S. here, and went through everything with them. They were kind enough to swap me out to the latest Gen 2 systems. So real quick, wired that up this week, and everything works really great. Does all of the nice functions to it. But I think you're going to find things like this becoming more prevalent, because more and more bikes, especially some of the European bikes, are using more CAN bus systems to run the electronics. I think KTM's gone to it. All the BMWs have CAN systems. I'm not sure if the higher end Hondas do, like the Goldwing or anything like that, if they've gone to that. So that's kind of my story with electronics. Happy that mine are all working again. But I only have a couple sets of lights. Kevin, you've probably seen some of the BMW guys, especially those that are doing long distance, or the off-road guys. They might have 2 to 4 sets of lights. I mean, it is like they are lighting up like the sun when they turn everything on.
So So let's talk about it for a second. There are people who, when they really get into long road riding, they've got auxiliary tanks that have a separate fuel pump that pumps things down into their regular tank and the regular fuel line when it gets to that point. Or they've got an iPad and a GPS and a phone mount, and all of them plug in and all of them charge off of the system. They're using the CAN Smarts, they're using the PDM 60s and their type of bikes to help control that. And there's a good chance that they've upgraded the alternator on the bike, just to kind of make sure that they've got the output that they need for some of these systems in case they all turn on at the same time or whatever. And then you've got like you were just saying, Tom, it's like, hey, I've got 6 lights on the bike. Then I've got the headlight and the main light, and they're LEDs. But yeah, but still, that's a little much,
It depends. So like my small LEDs pull 4 amps. That's it. That's the most that they do. The bigger ones, yes, may pull 10 to 15 amps. Wattage is negligible, but at least on the GSs, I know that we've got I think it's a 535 watt generator or alternator on it, so it can supply a lot of power. I don't think you have to really worry about it these days with the LED lights. Certainly when we were adding halogen lights just a dozen years ago, it was a big concern. because they pulled so much power.
Well,
but these days, I mean, I run mine now where, you know, in the cold, I've got my lights on, the rear brake is on, my seat is on, my jacket's cranking, my gloves are cranking, I've got the grips on. I don't see, and I take a look at the voltage, and I don't see really a drop in voltage much at all. Maybe from regulars 14.2, I might drop with everything on to maybe 14.
Yeah, and one thing that everybody needs to consideration is the three of us, we're not the bagger cruiser rider currently, right? Our bikes, I mean,
currently, you mean that there's a chance we might? God.
Well, I mean, Larry has had a Harley in the past.
I've had two.
Yeah, two Harleys. I've had a cruiser. I mean, and even Chris, you know, the Kawasaki he sold was more of a cruiser type bike. So, I mean, never say never.
But you've all seen the light.
Well, I'll say I'm going to say never say never, and I appreciate all of our cruiser followers and. You know, our trike followers
and everything. I just have to add that dig in there.
I don't know. I don't know. Watching the Harley presentation, I started thinking, "Oh, road glide."
That's about all you can think now. That's about it. Anyway, so and we're going to quickly comment on that in just a second because we're getting towards the end of the show. But we don't have those kind of bikes, right? And so a lot of those bikes, you know, somebody might go in and they buy a used one, or they buy one that doesn't have the factory sound system, and they get the third-party speakers and all that put into place. And then they keep asking why their batteries seem to be dying so fast. It's just like, well, you've got this amp that is pulling so much out of this, and your alternator with all the other things you've added to it, the heated seats and the heated grips and the heated this and the heated that, you know, and you know, all the other things you've got on your bike that accessory wise that use a lot of energy, it just can't keep up, and so you're just draining it faster, and the alternator can't keep up.
That's true, and that's why I started off saying you have to know your bike. When you start adding electrical stuff, you've got to know what's the output of your alternator and what's the static or the regular draw of your bike off that alternator. How many watts does it need to run? You know, I've always known that for my bikes, but yeah, you can get yourself in trouble real quick.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. We are getting towards the end of the show. So if you guys don't have anything else to add on the topic, we're going to briefly, and I mean ever so briefly, because that's what it should have been, talk about the Harley 2021 virtual release, I guess is what that was. Yeah. So it was 45 minutes. Why?
Really? Was it?
I don't know. I don't know, because they could have summed it up in about 3. Basically, there's a lot of models that they're getting away, you know, that they're not going to have anymore. They are keeping the Street 500 for the American market, strictly because of Riding Academy. Now, did they say strictly because of Riding Academy? No. However, they have no bike to replace the Riding Academy bike. Riding Academy generates, probably for the companies that do it, for their dealerships that do it right, would generate probably around 7 figures a year on additional revenue. You know, by the time you calculate bikes and everything, that, because I mean, Riding Academies are full. They're just full. People are eating them up. They make some money off of them, but then you've got people coming back and getting bikes and shirts, and you know, general figure is 6 to 7 figures that they earn from the Riding Academy per dealership.
And Kevin, I think we should mention that, you know, for the Riding Academies, the bike has to be under 500 cc's and a certain weight. I don't know the weight, but the Street 500 that I've read separately is only going to be imported into the U.S. Because it won't pass Euro 5 emissions. So It's only going to be a U.S. bike.
Yeah. And is it 5? I thought it was 600 cc's, under 600 cc's.
I think for the BRC, it's under 500.
I can't.
That's why that bike is like 493 cc, something like that.
That's a long time ago when I had to know that figure. So with that, they're coming out with some new paint. Shocker. They're painting dyke bikes differently and going to call them a different model. You know, and like, I can't remember off the top of my head, the lines that they're getting rid of. There's no new bikes announced. There's no really shocking news. It was such an awkward, scripted presentation. I beg you not to watch it. Actually, no. I beg you that if you want just to laugh, watch it. If you want,
was there anything about the Pan Am on it?
Yes. They had a section devoted to the Pan Am.
But nothing we didn't already know, right?
No. But and it's going to be introduced next in February, and they had lots of videos of people riding Pan Ams on.
But what does that mean? It's going to be introduced next. What does that mean? Introduced. It's not released, because I already said released. What introduced? We have seen them for years. They've had them in dealerships surrounded by plexiglass for months.
When can I go into a dealership and sit on it?
It's been is that what it is? It's like, hey, you can do. What does it mean to be introduced? Release the stupid bike. It's.
I think that means that it's going to be available to buy.
Then use the word release, because that's what everybody else in the free world uses.
That's my word, introduced. Perhaps they said release.
Although we can't fault just Harley for that, because Yamaha with the Tenere 700, that was vaporware for 2 years, as they hinted about it before it actually finally showed up.
Yeah, but they didn't. I mean, they actually came out and said, okay, we're going to release it here first. Then we're going to wait 2 years and release it, or a year and release it in the U.S. But they used released, and you knew when they made the announcement. But Harley's been doing this. It's coming in 2020. It's coming in 2021. And freaking pick a date and let the bike go. All
right, so hold on. Kevin says released February 22nd in the chat.
Okay. Right. So K2, we're going to hold you to it. We're going to hold you to it.
There we go.
So
I think that as you were saying, Kevin, the event was rich in details about new paint jobs, presumably more expensive sound systems, and I think the big news in this event was that and what's his name? Zeitz? What's the name of the new
CEO? Yeah, I think that's
Zeitz.
So in his very stiff and formal manner, I think that he said that they're coming out with a new, more luxurious line of bikes that will be one step above CVO. They're calling this the enthusiast line.
Oh God!
Because that's what we need. That's what we need when we're going through a global pandemic and everybody's cash flow is tight, is a more expensive bike, because that makes all the business sense in the world.
So
what CVOs are typically in the 30K range. So this 40. Means these are going to be 40, 50.
Yeah, the CVOs are in the 40 range.
Yeah,
or 40s. Okay.
Yes, wow. And so these will be. They have to be above that, and I can't even imagine what else they would add to the bikes. The new CVOs are coming with the largest Harley engine ever put in in one of their factory bikes at 117.
And apparently it's going to be platinum plated.
Is that true?
No. So, I mean, I just got to tell you, it's
make above 80 horsepower.
And it will make above. They promise it'll make above 80 horsepower.
Harley's killing me right now, guys. I mean, they just really are. It's like, okay, people really wanted the Bronx, and you killed it, and you're just toying with the custom, and And, you know, K2 also said, hey, we're going to show you the custom, you know, and I just.
Yeah, you want to bring.
Oh, they killed the Roadster. You know, they killed the Roadster.
Bring young people in. A naked Street Fighter will bring young people
that's
into
the
your
thing.
dealership and your brand.
They had the Sportster Roadster. They had the Bronx that they were talked about coming out with. They've got the custom 1250, right? All right, so they killed the Roadster. They put millennials on every one of their demos that they had in there just about. But there's rarely a bike in there that they would be attracted to. Oh, you know, and I'm just like, and at this point, I'm almost done. I'm almost just like, you know what? You guys do what you're going to do. Good luck to you. Obviously, you know more than I do, because who am I? I'm just a guy that can just get frustrated on the internet, and I don't reach a fraction of the motorcycle audience. So what the heck do I know? Other than every article I ever read agrees with me.
So I didn't bother watching it because they required you to give your email address to watch the video. So I didn't do that. But did they do any updates to the Livewire at least, or is it standing pat?
No, they didn't. They didn't say much about Livewire or any electrical bikes, for that matter.
Okay.
Well,
and I signed in by giving them your email, Tom. So you already signed up.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
I'm really going to welcome those advertising.
Well, the
emails.
promos, yes, I signed you up for all of the
All those
advertising.
promos.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'll say this. I hope it works out for them, but I just, and I don't know their numbers. I don't know. I mean, I guess I kind of do, but I don't know the internal politics. But I got to tell you, watching Zeit act like he's passionate. He's like, I'm passionate about. You don't even ride, dude. He's like, do you even ride, man? I mean,
yeah, he said he did ride. He said he'd been riding ever since he was a teenager.
Well, that's not what anything he said earlier and when he first came on.
Yeah, right.
And it was very well known that dude doesn't, I have ridden when I was a teenager versus I am currently actively a rider and was riding when they put me in this role. It's a completely different thing, because most people did ride at his age as a teenager. In the years he's been a CEO since then, doubt it, because of everything that we heard.
Well, he said he was riding their new adventure bike in Kenya, on his ranch in Kenya. He has
because that relates to the American motorcycling audience. So I'm sorry, I'm just cynical tonight of that. Well, I'll tell you this, though. I would hate to be the riding academy coach that puts the CEO through his class and would have to fail him. I'm sorry.
I am sure that's a private class.
Yeah, I'm sure it's we're going to do this until you pass it. And he has probably ultimate chances on passing that thing. All right, we're going to do the eval again for the 5th time. We're only going to do exercise 2 because apparently you can't keep your foot off the ground, or the bike off the ground. Oh, I didn't see you drop the bike, Mr. Zeitz. I didn't see that at all. You saved it at the last minute, even though it took 3 people to pick that thing up. So anyway.
Well, I think that this event to me represented the direction that Zeitz wants to take Harley, and that he's taking it, which is towards bigger, more expensive, more exclusive. They want to make more money per bike, even if they sell fewer bikes.
Yeah,
well, they definitely. I thought that was his new strategy. The Rewire was to make the brand more exclusive, and back to its core roots.
Yeah. So K2 just brought up a good point. We did say this was going to be short, and we've been just beating him over the head for like 5-6 minutes. So let's do this. Thank you, K2, for keeping us in check here. Somebody has to, because I don't know why I got all boiled up there. It just infuriated me when I spent that much time with my life wasted. So paddock news. We got a little bit of paddock, and I think some of it's really good because I'm excited to see more bagger racing.
Yeah, well, and we got that. So Just briefly, I'll mention that the bagger event in 2020 was so popular that they are now coming back in 2021 with 5 bagger racing events for the year, including at Laguna Seca. And maybe, depending how things go this year, I might make it down there to see that. This is a very fun event, where they're taking stock baggers and they're modifying them for the race. And last year, the race was won by Indian. Really, the Indian bike was much faster than the other bikes, including the Harleys and the other Indians. He, in fact, went off the track at one point and got back on and still managed to win the race. But second place was taken by a Harley. So the hope and excitement is that perhaps next year this will be a close and competitive competition between Indy and Harley for the title of King of the Baggers. And so that's great news, a fun event. And I expect there'll be more entries, and the racing is surprisingly good with these big bikes. And the other piece of news, paddock news, that I wanted to mention is on MotoGP, and I suspected this, but now they have released the tentative schedule, MotoGP schedule for next year, and they have postponed, postponed the races in Austin and in Argentina. Those have been postponed till the end of the season. The dates are indeterminate, and they may or may not happen at all. So the racing will start in Qatar. They've extended the practice season in Qatar, and then they will have the initial racing there. And the racing will be in Europe for the rest of the season at this point. So COVID continues to take its toll on the racing schedule, and we'll see how things turn out. There certainly will be racing next year, but whether or not it comes to the Americas remains to be seen. And that's it for the paddock for this week.
And let's see, Rodney mentioned that Harley was allowed to run the 131 engine, and Indian was restricted to their 108 and Indian one. I don't know if that's the rules for last year or this next year, but I find that funny. Because it seems like no matter what racing we get into, Indian wins, and all of a sudden Harley's like, well, they can't run their engine. That's and then Indian gets told to run a smaller engine than Harley does. I find that funny.
All right. My input, 2 cents input on that is that I would love to see the baggers, but I want it run like a true bagger. So I want a guy in jeans, a t-shirt, and a half helmet and sunglasses. I want music blaring, and I want half a cigarette hanging out of his mouth while he's racing. That is a bagger.
All right, so I'll say this. I want the racer in full gear because I'm not a sadist, but to have the music blaring would be hilarious. Just like, and you get to pick. I mean, honestly, roll it off the showroom, run what you brought. You know what I'm saying?
There you go.
Run. You pulled it off the showroom. Run what you got. And if you got music, crank that SOB up and let it roll. I would have loved that. All right, so let's move on. Throttle crew members, thank you for donating and helping out this cluster of a show. We really appreciate all your support. You keep us on the air. You keep us motivated, and you're always here to give advice and comments and criticism and support whenever we need it. And you keep us in check. We really appreciate it. Without you, there would be no show. And we really appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show, if you're getting something out of the show, go to our website, throttledpodcast.com. Click on the Patreon logo, and you can get signed up, or go to patreon.com/throttled, and you can get signed up there as well. So, all right. Guys, we did it. We got to the end of another show. So I guess it's time to start signing out, isn't it? All righty. Let's see, how do we want to do this? Let's do the email address first. So do me a favor. Go open up your favorite email program, Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, Outlook, whatever. And send us an email, feedback@throttledpodcast.com. I'd like to hear whatever comments you have. We've been more topic related the last 3 or 4 episodes. If you like that, let us know. I mean, if you don't give us feedback, we don't know if we're doing a good job. If you want us to go back to just strictly news and forget all this opinion stuff, let us know that as well. We want to know how we're resonating with our audience, good and bad. We would love to get feedback. Another thing you could do is on Facebook, Throttled Podcast, Instagram, Throttle Show, Twitter @Throttle Show. Hit us up on our social media. Let us know, like, hey, I love the new topics. I love to hear your opinions, even though you're wrong. That's fine. We would love to hear back from you guys. And just like, are you enjoying the conversation? Are you enjoying the batter? Yes, tonight we picked on baggers, right? I own a BMW, and I've picked on BMWs probably more than I've picked on Harley over the course of the show. Because what's an adventure bike without a goofball thinking he knows what he's doing, falling off the bike, and when he tries to stop at a red light? And I make plenty of Starbucks, BMW jokes as well. So, we are equal opportunity, offenders, but we do it all in fun. If you can't take a little ribbon, it's one of those things, what I compare it to? How you have your little brother and you can pick on your little brother, but if anybody else picks on your little brother, you're going to beat the snot out of them. That's what we got here. It's all love. It's all love. Anyway, let's see here. I did all that. I did the mail. I can't think of anything else. So gentlemen, who would like to sign out first for us today?
Yeah, I'll hit it up. Beauty before age. Everybody have a good week. I do plan on getting out on the bikes this week, either the scooter during the week for some little lunchtime rides as I can. If weather's supposed to be very nice in the southeast here, at least warming up and hopefully in between some of the rain. Hopefully get out on the big bike maybe next weekend. But everybody have a good week. If you are able to ride, get out there. And again, remember, it's transportation, not just a toy.
Larry?
Agreed. And I'm just looking at some of the comments. Have fun. Ride when you can. Ride safe and be safe. Kevin?
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for being here and listening to the show. And for those in the live stream, thank you so much. We enjoyed going through it. If you've got topics for us, hit us up. Let us know what you want us to talk about, because we're older and our minds are failing us, and sometimes we struggle. And we may run out of things to talk about one day, and that would be a shame. So give us something to talk about, or give us a different angle to talk about. We'll revisit something and talk about it and play devil's advocate, because, hey, that's what we do. But outside of that, if you're able to get out there and ride and your bike isn't covered with 3 feet of snow, get out there and ride safe, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you all next week. Bye, guys. All right, great show, guys. Once we got past the Jeep discussion, because apparently this was the Jeep show for a while.
Love them beeps, I tell you.
And then my wife, she came in bringing me a hot candied pecan, so I started munching on those, because you got to eat them while they're hot. You let them cool down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
So I started trying to lean back, get away from the mic, so I wasn't crunching the mic so much. But I was enjoying those for a while. And everything. And man, K2, appreciate you keeping us honest on just like I thought this was going to be a short discussion.
I love Rodney's comment just now as far as Larry needs to do a rant about adventure riders.
Okay.
Seriously.
Since I rank on the cruiser so much.
Yeah. Well, that Larry's on a Versus. Isn't that like a faux adventure rider? It's
an adventure wannabe bike. Yeah.
And I stayed, now, Larry, I want you to pay attention. I stayed away from the term wannabe. That was all Tom. 100%, Mr. Georgia there. Okay.
Wait, you got to remember, I've ridden that bike. I have test rode that bike, so I know what he's riding.
I have
it's a very nice bike.
I judged it inadequate for me, but that for me, and what's important is what I like. And
all right, I am going to do an ADV ranch now. Now you've pushed me over the limit.
He's gonna wait for the perfect time where we've got like this great ADV episode. He's just gonna blow it up. And totally. All right. So, guys on the live stream, thank you so much. You're awesome as always. We're going to go ahead and end the stream now. Have a great week. Ride safe, and we'll talk to you all soon. Bye.